This podcast is brought to you by Molten Balls, official ball of the UPSL. Hey soccer fans, this is Dennis Pope and you're back with the UPSL Podcast. I'm here with Art F. Dakari and we're going to talk about all things UPSL this week. Off the top, OC Invicta is the UPSL Fall Season Champion, so we'll revisit their run to the championship. We'll also talk about the recent UPSL Eastern Summit in Philadelphia. There's always more UPSL expansion talk, so hold on tight for all that and maybe a little bit more on this episode of the UPSL Podcast. Alright, so the UPSL Fall Champion was crowned 10 days ago. OC Invicta FC emerged the champion, beating Santa Ana Winds FC in the title game. OC Invicta had a shortened path to the championship, Art, having only to play a semifinal and then the championship game. All the other teams had to play quarterfinal round games, but OC Invicta had a bye because their opponent, FC Jinga out of Florida, didn't make the trip to the national championship game, so they had a bye. They chose not to play a game in the quarterfinals. So Invicta's first game was Saturday night against Real San Jose in the semifinals, and they got out to a big lead, and Real San Jose owner was not happy about that. Art, you were there for the game. What was your response to what you saw and heard?
Well, from what I saw with Real San Jose, a lot of credit to them. They played hard. They did fall behind 2-0 in the first half, but they did cut the lead to make it 2-1. They showed a lot of good effort. I liked what I saw from them. As far as the situation involving OC Invicta having to play one less game, like you would call it, essentially even a bye, not playing in the quarterfinals, my whole thing there is that there needs to be a plan B. And if there isn't a plan B, actually what I'm really wanting to say is there needs to be a plan B and even a plan C. There needs to be an opponent there for them to play. You just got to say, if Jinga doesn't show up, who is going to be that replacement? That's what I think the UPSL needs to take note of and make sure that this does not happen again.
The format leaves something to be desired. There's a lot of comments about how the championship finals need to be spread out over at least one more day. If you're going to play 3 games, they need to be over 3 days. Moving forward, as the UPSL gets bigger, there's going to be more involvement from more conferences throughout the country who want to host championship games. So the way the championship games are going to be hosted will become different than they have been in the last year or two. So there's a lot of change happening. And a lot of talk of the next champion being in some place other than California, which is where the UPSL final has always been held since 2011 when the league was founded. There's a lot of movement for change, though, and I think that's part of the UPSL's inherent value is things can constantly change for the better, right? So the league is constantly trying to improve the situation, and even though things might not have been ideal this time around, it was closer to what the league wants in its championship final. There is some strategy going to be involved. Will the league be able to get away from hosting it over a single weekend and adding an additional day? That's going to take quite a bit of logistical work to make that happen, no matter where it takes place. So there are challenges ahead for the league as it grows, and making it a more suitable championship final series for the teams is part of that plan. Hopefully, situations like we had this last weekend where there isn't a plan set aside in the case of, a team not being able to make it. So the plan was to bring in Lionside. The championship division season isn't over yet. So you can't bring in a team that doesn't have its season over yet and play them in a championship series. And that was the option in the spring because the seasons ended at the same time. So you brought in the championship division winner. You couldn't do that this time around. So bringing in Lionside wasn't really an option, even though they're already the championship division champion, having been crowned that with still a game left to play. I think they're 9 points ahead in the championship division, so they've kind of cleared the way. It's just, I don't know. It didn't make any sense this time to bring in the championship division team in place. So the only real option was to give OC Invicta the number 1 overall seed a bye. It's not ideal, and I think, in the future, if we have 8-team championship playoff at the end of the season, it'll take commitment from all those other teams to get there, no matter the situation, because not seeing Jenga show up, hurt. It kind of hurts the league a little bit, right? Not having a conference champion show up. I think some people can see the argument being made by Real San Jose, the inherent unfairness of playing a team that hasn't played a game yet when you have already that day. But you sort of have to deal. That's part of pro development soccer. You kind of play the hand that you're dealt, and you do the best with what you have. So kudos to Real San Jose for playing a game, playing them straight up for a while and being very competitive. But I think everybody who has seen OC Invicta, outwardly they say, oh, we can beat this team. But I think after they've proven in back-to-back seasons, this group, led by Paulo Cardozo, Pablo Cruz, Chris Clutie, Adam Hobbs in goal, Pablo Cruz in midfield, and a varied group of wings and other midfielders who have played a part too, has just proven to be too much athletically for most teams, to defend against. And you can do it for small spells, but they break you down in a number of different ways. They can go through the middle with Pablo Cruz and Paulo Cardozo, or they can break you down on the wings. So Invicta was a hard get for any team. They went undefeated all season, right? I think they had 2 ties, but they didn't suffer any losses, and I think they are the rightful champion for the UPSL. They've been the best group, best team in the league the last 12 months, and they continue to show why. Now the question is, what happens next with this group? What do you think, Art? What do you think OC Invicta and this group of players will do next?
When you say the next move for Invicta, I'm sitting here saying I feel like it's the obvious. They're going to wait for the next season. Are they going to come back with the same amount of players? Are they going to be virtually the same team? Naturally, you expect some changes. It's a sports club, we know that. But will they be even better? It's tough to say. I think if they even were to lose a couple players, they still probably are the favorites to win the next UPSL season.
And everybody knows who their technical director is, and if you don't, you probably should. It's Eric Winalda. And I think that a lot hinges on February 10th and the United States Soccer Federation presidential election and the results of that, because it would be very hard for him to be both president and technical director at the same time. And I don't even think that that's a possibility. So what happens when your team loses its most famous face and their, arguably their leader, right, and your technical director? Will that mean the end? If he becomes president, does that mean the end of OC Invicta, you think, in that group of team as we know it?
I wouldn't say it would mean the end of the team as we know it. Like I said, there could be some players going from one place to another. I think the club still stays as a club, but losing some players is one thing. But one thing that good clubs do is that they find ways to bring in some more talent. And if they're unable to, you say at the end of the day, okay, we had our run, we had a couple titles, or assuming they might win another one, but you know what I mean, as in the group of players. Yeah, it all depends on where it goes. Some clubs could keep going for a long time. Some of them might struggle for a bit.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think they go as Eric Winalda goes. He's sort of the heartbeat behind that team. Obviously, they have quite a bit of backing and a real leader-driven group of players. And so I think their mentality is clearly very strong with that group. But without a focus and a goal going forward, I think it's still sort of undefined for them a little bit. And they have more options than just the UPSL. I think this group does, especially several of these players. So it'll be an exciting off-season for them to see what they want to do and what happens. But I would definitely wait until February 10th and the election results to say, which way I think Invicta and this group is going to go.
And when we come back, we'll talk about the UPSL Eastern Summit in Philadelphia. Okay, everybody, we are back now, and as you all know, the UPSL Eastern Summit just took place this past weekend in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, and of course, Dennis Pope was there in attendance. And Dennis, the first thing I want to say is, I really hope... No, correction. You better have had a Philly cheesesteak. Otherwise, I think we might have to just stop this podcast altogether.
It was the first thing I did when I got there. But it was a hellish day getting there. And I'm glad I was finally able to get there and get to Gino's and get to try the world-famous cheesesteak. And it was really good. I was kind of surprised. I was hoping for something that was equally delicious and fulfilling, and I think I got both. But getting there took 12 hours. It was the most incredible travel day of my life. But I showed up, and I was there at 1 a.m. Philadelphia time, enough time to get to my hotel room and get a little bit of sleep before the summit the next day. And that was not the only cheesesteak I had. I was forced to try and eat another cheesesteak on Saturday. Everybody thought it was a good idea to have cheesesteaks delivered to the Eastern Summit, but I had already had my fill, I think, and I didn't really want it. Plus, I didn't know where it was coming from. It was kind of a mysterious cheesesteak. So I saw the one I got from Gino's be cooked and hand-delivered to me. So it was really cool. It was great to be in Philadelphia for the Eastern Summit. We hosted another annual general meeting for the UPSL there and had a lot of good voices, including Paul Caligiuri and Eric Winalda speak. And we had more than a dozen teams from the East and the Midwest show up and participate and be there as part of the U.S. Soccer Coaches Convention there at the Philadelphia Convention Center, which is a massive, beautiful complex. And yeah, it was a great experience being there. I'm just wishing it lasted a little bit longer, but also kind of thankful because the Eagles game was the day after. And I heard from my Uber driver that it gets kind of crazy there in the city when the Eagles are playing, especially if it was the NFC Championship game and EAGLES, right? Eagles. So.
And one other thing, did you get the chance to run up the steps like Rocky?
No, my friends have been asking me that. And I didn't even know. I couldn't even tell you where that was. I couldn't find that on the map, and I didn't have enough time to look at it. I wish I did. I saw that a lot of UPSL teams did make it to the Rocky statue and slung their scarves and stuff over the statue. And there's some interesting pictures on social media, especially Napa Sporting SC. Their ownership group got there and took a bunch of pictures that are really cool looking with their scarf. Yeah, just one of the things I wasn't able to get to. I was only there in Philadelphia like 40 hours. And so, counting the 3 hours of sleep I got and, the other travel time and all that stuff, yeah, I didn't have time to see much if it wasn't on the way to something.
Overall, though, what was, the whole feel of the Eastern Summit? Was it just exactly what you expected, or were there even some surprises?
It was exciting, to see so many new faces and to see new ideas about what they want to have happen out of their experience in the UPSL. And there's also the blossoming of the UPFL, the United Premier Futsal League, which is going to build itself here in the next 12 months, and you're going to be hearing more about that soon. There's just a lot of excitement about the possibilities for U.S. soccer right now with the to go back to the U.S. Soccer Federation presidential race again. I think there's a lot of hope right now for change. And that was on display at the UPSL Eastern Summit. A lot of people are bringing teams into the UPSL hoping to start fresh or start something new. And I think there's just a really good feeling out there for the most part.
I like hearing these positive vibes. As we all know, and of course we don't want to keep on bringing up certain memories that people don't want to talk about, but we know the United States men's national team did not qualify to the 2018 World Cup in Russia, but you're talking about the possibilities of change. People are hopeful. They want to see some kind of change. They want to see a lot of things going into the right direction, and this is the attitude that we need, for U.S. soccer.
I'd agree with that. I'm just hopeful that the voice and the movement is heard. and it's not squashed by bureaucracy and red tape and bogged down potentially in court and other things that could go wrong for this. And I think the UPSL stands to benefit, from change. It's one of the leagues that's model is working right now. There's a lot of leagues out there right now, and people in certain metrics can say MLS is working. Look at all the DPs that are coming in and how they're operating at bigger and bigger budgets. I think the Atlanta franchise just signed a kid out of Argentina for like $15 million, which is a league record. And certainly things are going to change a little bit there, and more money's coming in all over the place. So if the UPSL, it continues to position itself as the premier pro development year-round, pro-rel, international sort of calendar system, then there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on the UPSL and a lot of investment, hopefully, you would think.
And when we come back, we'll talk some UPSL expansion and take your questions on social media.
Do you want to advertise with the fastest growing pro development league in the country? Advertise with the UPSL. You'll reach more than 70 different soccer markets in more than 20 different states. For more information, go to upslsoccer.com or follow UPSL on Twitter at UPSL Soccer.
Hi, this is Paul Caligari, and you're listening to the UPSL Podcast.
Okay, everybody, back now for some UPSL expansion talk. Latest word here, 2 newest teams in the UPSL. First in Longmont, Colorado, Diablos FC, and in the state of Minnesota, FC Minneapolis. Dennis, what information do you got to share about these 2 newest members of the UPSL?
Well, Diablos FC jumps into the championship division in Colorado, and they now are starting to fill out that championship division. They're going to have 2 full divisions in Colorado this year. Only they and the Western Conference in Southern California will have multiple divisions of play still, although the Midwest isn't far off. And Longmont jumps in with ownership groups Alfonso Avina and Martin Avina. They've played amateur soccer. They know the scene there in Colorado, and they're going to do a good job, and they're going to put together a quality team. They're prominent in the Latin community. They're in the suburb of Boulder, and Diablos FC stands to, I think, do a very good job there going forward. And the other team that added just today, FC Minneapolis, is probably one of the more exciting groups to come to the league in some time. A big city, right? Minneapolis is right next to the capital of Minnesota. It is the largest city in Minnesota. FC Minneapolis has been around since 2013 and was the American Premier League champions in, I think, 2015, although that league's now defunct. FC Minneapolis has been a prominent team there in Minnesota for some time, and they were being courted by both the NPSL and the PDL, not to mention the USL Division III thing that's being brought to the table here in 2018. And I think that player-manager Ian Sendy knows the scene, knows what he's getting into in the Midwest Conference, and has a group of international players that are ready and willing to take on the best in the UPSL. The Midwest Conference is going to be outstanding. They have 22 teams already, and I think they're still going to add maybe 1 or 2 more. And it'll be exciting to see what happens next for that when it comes to spring, how they're going to set up the schedule and what they do to determine their champion. I think the Midwest Conference and the UPSL is probably one of the most exciting things to happen to pro development soccer in the history of American soccer. It's that good right now.
And last but not least, we have a question from Don Harmon, actually more than one question, on our Twitter handle. It is the UPSL Podcast.
And of course, Don is the Colorado Conference manager for the UPSL, so I think he might be trolling us a little bit, but go ahead with the question, Art.
All right, here it goes. How big will UPSL be by the end of 2018? How about for the start of spring 2018? When will United States Adult Soccer announce which leagues are which tiers? And how many Open Cup proper seeds will UPSL hold in 2019?
Well, let's address them one at a time. Can we go one at a time?
Yes, we can. First one was, how big will UPSL be by the end of 2018?
By the end of the year, 150 plus teams, maybe more. I would not shy away from 160. And if the league keeps growing at this rate, there's no reason to think that 175 and even the big 200 isn't out of the question. I think that realistically, the number 150 would be the number that the league would shoot for, but no number is out of reach right now.
All right, next part. How about for the start of spring 2018? I mean, how big will the UPSL be by the start of spring 2018?
Right, so the season starts in March, and there should be at least 140 teams. The league is at about 132 teams currently. To say the league will add just 8 more teams in 3 months, I think at this point people would say just 8. You know, you don't have 12 or 15 more coming in? Come on, UPSL. The start of the season, teams have to have registered by February 1st. And from the date of this podcast, that's only 8 more days. So does the UPSL add 8 more teams in the next 8 days? Who knows?
Next, when will U.S. Adult Soccer announce which leagues are which tiers?
I had an interesting conversation with John Palmata. He's the president of U.S. Adult Soccer at the summit last Saturday. We didn't talk too much about the tiers, but the announcements are coming soon. They're trying to work as hard and as quickly as possible so that teams are set up for the spring.
And finally, how many Open Cup proper seeds will UPSL hold in 2019?
It would only be fair that the UPSL Pro Premier Division would receive the same, or any other pro development league would receive the same. If all the leagues are on the same tier, they should all have the same number of tournament seeds, right, Art?
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I think there's actually maybe a few more questions here. I think something about along the lines of how high is up and why is the sky blue? Just kidding, Don.
Yeah. Don's a straight shooter, and so we appreciate his questions. Keep them coming, and we'll do a better job of giving you an inside scoop on the podcast, Don.
All right, and with that, it is time to wrap up this edition of the UPSL podcast. For Dennis Pope, I'm Art Iftikhari.
Good night, everybody.
We'll see you next time.